Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:06 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. It's been a big year. President Trump won the election. He got a lot of endorsements, too, including from our next guest, who is just 16 years old, but already very active in Republican politics. His name is Kellen Habibelahy, and he is the chairman of the Virginia High School Republicans and now a member of the State Central Committee, making him the youngest such member in the country, we believe, according to all of the data keepers on this subject. Kellen, good to have you on the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Vince.
16 years old. High school still. What are you, a sophomore this year?
Yes, I'm a sophomore.
You're a sophomore, and you're engaged in Republican electoral politics. How did you arrive here, Kellen?
So last fall, a little bit after the 2023 elections, I was kind of upset with the results, but just thought that this is my future, so I should get involved. And I got involved with the high school wing, the Virginia GOP, the Virginia High School Republicans. And from there, I just became chair this summer. And we've been deploying volunteers across Virginia for our candidates.
Is that typical for a sophomore to become the chairman of the Virginia High School Republicans, or is that usually a senior?
It's usually a senior position, but here in the 10th district, we were able to help out a lot with Loudoun GOP especially, and a lot of the people in the group really like that. So I'm the first non-senior chair of our organization.
Is it strange to be actively engaged in politics and sort of helping with it, but not being allowed to vote yet?
Some people might think that, but I still believe that this is my future. We're the next people that are going to be buying houses, raising families. So I think that the earlier we get involved, the better. Take an initiative of
no,
the
it's
future.
Cool. How did you come upon your politics? How did you become a conservative?
So I was actually a bit of a liberal for a while, but I think around I was raised in a liberal household, but around the 2020 election, I just realized a lot of the stuff the left was saying was stuff that conflicted with just my deeper down views. I heard a lot of people on the left just saying not to celebrate July 4th and just a lot of just anti-American ideas. And from there, I just started listening to the Republican Party and Donald J. Trump, and I just realized that ideology is something that I support more. Was
there any specific moment? I mean, obviously, you know, people who crap all over July 4th, probably a good indication they're on the wrong side of things. But was there any moment where you're like, whoa, like the ideology I thought I was with, they're definitely not on my side?
So I attended a lot of these BLM protests in 2020, and then I just realized they're getting very radical. These guys were destroying cities. There was riots. Minneapolis was destroyed by.
Well, wait a second. Just to be clear, you were 12 years old in 2020, right? So you were attending a bunch of BLM protests in 2020?
Yeah, like local protests. Those are pretty calm since they were like local and more community driven. But yeah, these city ones were the ones that really drove me away from the Democratic Party.
I don't want to cause any divisions in the family beyond what may already exist, but you said you were brought up in a liberal household. What do your parents think of your conservative politics?
So, yeah, we definitely have a lot of disagreements politically. We still love each other, of course.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, we're pretty much polar opposites on a lot of our issues.
Do you have big discussions at this, or is there a detente at home? Everyone just doesn't talk about it.
So I guess after the election, we don't talk as much because, I mean, a lot of it is all, just done. Donald J. Trump won. We won the Senate and the House.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely in the prime election season, the 2 months or month leading up to it, there's definitely a lot of arguments.
So where do you get your news from, Kellen? How do you consume news? So obviously, for you to make a break from the left at 16 years old, you're looking at, or whatever age you did that, you're looking at all of these incoming headlines and then realizing, hey, that's not true. That you only arrive at that conclusion if you see alternative sources that help you inform your understanding. How do you consume news?
So I would say a mix of like conservative leaning sources like Fox, and I also just like seeing not just journalists, but actual like just regular people's opinions on like X, for example.
Yes.
So just a mix of those two, how the news reports on it, as well as like just diversified opinions
Yeah.
from people online.
So X was important to forming the current iteration of your politics.
Yeah, yeah.
So do your parents regret giving you access to X?
um, no, they're very supportive of me and my I guess my journey in conservative politics.
I
They're always
love that.
helping me travel. Are always helping me travel to different events. I was just
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the GOP advance in Charlottesville.
Oh, really? Oh, so your parents take you to these events because they're important to you.
Yes, yes.
That's cool. All right. I respect that a lot. I like that. Okay, so tell me about what high schoolers are interested in terms of politics. Are high schoolers generally politically engaged? Is it exceptional for you at the age of 16 to be this interested, or is that becoming more typical?
I think it's definitely becoming more typical, especially around the presidential elections. I think it just really depends on social group how people will just participate in politics. Some people, I definitely think, with young men, regardless of whether they're involved or not, I think they were overall happy that Trump won. Whether you went to school next day wearing a MAGA hat or just simply just talking to your friends about that you're happy he won. I think even if people aren't really engaged in doing things, I think a lot of people were still definitely happy that Trump won the election.
Was that you said young men specifically? Was that exclusively among the young men that you know? Were young women pleased, displeased with how the election went, or indifferent?
I think there was definitely some young women that were happy about it, but this election I think was pretty divided gender wise.
Even
So
in high school, you could see the divisions were along gender lines.
yes.
That's wild. Okay, so was there a lot of excitement for Kamala Harris in high school? Were people very amped up for Kamala?
I don't think so. I think something I say a lot. I think a lot of Kamala's campaign was mainly just people not wanting Trump. I don't think there was a large crowd that was actually enthusiastic to support Kamala, and I think that was pretty bad for her campaign because they just relied on never Trumpers.
Yeah, for sure. So I know, of course, at being high schoolers, that the point of the campaign is not to appeal to your vote because you're not supposed to vote when you're in high school. But I do wonder what you think of like this use of celebrities, people like Oprah and Beyonce, to try and bring out votes of young voters. Do you think that is in any way resonant? Is that like if you hear that Beyonce is supporting someone, or if your classmates do, especially, does that hold any sway over their views?
Yeah, I used to think that before the election, but I think with these results that reinforce that, I don't think people want to listen to celebrities for their endorsements. I really thought that Taylor Swift endorsement would have done some damage, but it really seems that it didn't do anything. And I think they actually put out some polls or studies about these showing that people just didn't care about these celebrity endorsements.
Yes.
So I think the Democratic Party wasted a lot of time on that. You saw them bring out all these actors, singers, rappers to these rallies, and
Exactly.
I think it was a waste of time.
I agree with you. We're talking to Kellen Habibelahy, who is the chairman of the Virginia High School Republicans, a member of the State Central Committee. Kellen, I've never been a member of a State Central Committee. Tell me what that entails.
So I actually just I joined about 2 weeks ago. They voted on it at the recent meeting, but basically the State Central Committee is just the body of the Virginia Republican Party that just decides how the party will go. They make rules for the party, and we basically just assist the candidates.
That's cool. So what role do you think they envision for you? It's obvious they're clearly making a deliberate decision to include a 16-year-old on the committee. What do you think that is? What's your role there?
So when I talk in front of the committee to just plead my case on why I think I should join, I basically just said that the youth vote is really important. We're the next generation of voters, and we're still a voting bloc. But we'll be older voters soon as well. I said I think that me as a young person on this committee would be perfect to help just say what big issues are for young people and how to reach out to young people.
Do you envision having a career in politics? Is this something that you'd like to pursue as an adult?
Yeah, I think that's probably something I want to do with political strategy. I'm going to be helping out with some of the statewide campaigns, just with how to reach out to younger voters and helping them with doing that so we can
Is
win
Yeah, how
this
how far
November.
ahead in your life are you planning? Is that kind of the stepping stone to one day running for office yourself? Is that kind of how you're thinking about this?
I'm not 100% sure if I'd want to run for office, but definitely some career in political strategy or something like that. I definitely want to do that.
That's cool. All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes open for you. Occasionally, Kellen, in the past, there have been, young, the word you often attach is precocious, Republicans who come out and then they talk a really good game. They sound great. It's like, oh, this guy's so conservative. And the irony is you'll come back a decade from then and you revisit and you're like, whatever happened to that guy? He's a full-blown lefty now. He became he became a big Democrat. And there was a guy, I'm trying to remember his name to this effect.
Jonathan Crone.
Jonathan Crone. Good. See, you've got good knowledge because Jonathan Crone spoke at, I believe, CPAC years ago. He spoke at CPAC, and everyone was like, "Oh, look, the bright Republican kid." He gives this big speech, and then a decade later, he's writing for some lefty magazine about how the Republicans are awful. He's a big Democrat, and then Republicans are being mocked for taking the kid seriously. So, all I'm begging you today, Kellen, is don't make me into a punchline. That's all I'm asking.
I won't, I promise.
Thank you. All right, well, best of luck in all of your endeavors. Kellen Habibelahy, great to talk to you today, sir. Very nice to have you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
You too. All right, Kellen. See, he knows about the Jonathan Crone thing. That's really funny. That's really funny. All right, let's go to the phones. Sam is in Alexandria, line 1. Sam, good afternoon to you, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much for taking my call, Vince, because I know you are such a super humble guy. And I just wanted to probably say what everybody across this area is thinking, that from interviewing President Trump, all the tiers of politicians and scientists and economists, all the way to this young man, I tell you what, I can't think of anybody between you and Corey as a team. He goes out and hunts them down, and you have a way about your ability to interview is just outstanding. And I just wanted to, throw some props your direction, because I just sit here and I'm like, and I'm listening. A 16-year, okay. And all of the questions were spot on as to what I think all of us would want to know. And you have that ability across the board, regardless of who you're speaking to. And I just wanted to throw that out to you and wish you a happy new year prematurely.
Well, that's very nice of you, Sam, everything you just said. And I will say, insofar as I assess my own performance on anything, that is kind of the key. I mean, one of the elements of the show that we really focus on, we want all of the interviews because we're in such a unique market in the country where you actually have people who can influence the outcomes of our lives in meaningful ways. And you get interesting people like Kellen on the air, which that's kind of cool. 16 years old. He's involved in Republican politics. But at his core is sort of the point that you just made, which is I always want to ask a question that I feel like a normal person who's just listening to the radio would ask as a follow-up or hadn't yet contemplated that they'd want to know. But when the question comes out, they think, oh, yeah, I do want to know the answer to that. That's the target. So I'm always trying to hone that skill. And thank you for telling me that it's on its way.
I tell you what, I think you've honed that so sharply that I just love listening, and there's not a day that goes by that you don't bring somebody on, whether it's any of the economists to talk about what works and what doesn't work. The gentleman you had on that was a retail store owner that says, here's his margins, and here's how much he makes on eggs. I always learn something. And that's the important thing, I think, from all of your audience, that they listen to you. And again, throwing some love out to Corey as well, who probably has a Rolodex the size of a ham bone that just can reach out and find the appropriate people for the show.
Yeah, he's too good. He's putting us in a difficult position because I was trying to replace him with some foreigner or something. I just wanted to bring some foreign immigrant in, but it turns out he's actually hard to replace, unfortunately. So we'll figure it out at some point. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that.
You got it, brother. You got to have a great one.
You too.
WMAL, making sense of education, because what's happening in your kid's school matters. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Merry Christmas to Hoke in Round Hill. He's calling in on line one. Hello, Hoke. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Look,
Thank you.
in all my years in government, I can tell you that I had one thing that was told to me when I was stocking shelves at Piggly Wiggly and Winn-Dixie back in a long time ago. That is, if I break one jar of spaghetti sauce when I'm stocking those shelves, the profit margin for the entire case is on the floor.
That's what the boss said. He said, break one and we lose all of the profit.
That's what he told me, and I tell you what, that has caused my attention to detail for 40-plus years of my career.
Yeah, that'll do it. That's for sure. Yeah, but you gotta be careful there. Yeah, no, that really is the thing. And the left, of course, they don't care. They'll walk in, they'll break everything in the store, and they say you deserve it because you run a business, and that means you're filthy rich, and you don't deserve it. You don't deserve anything you have. It's so crazy. Meanwhile, for the rest of us in reality, we know what that means to run a small business, to be operating on those thin margins and then have somebody upend it, usually a lefty who's been given permission by the government officials who say, it's not a crime. Break as much as you want. No, in real America, it's a crime, and there should be consequences, actually. In a moment, updates for you on a bunch of stuff, including the latest effort by the left's elite legal minds to block Trump and specifically block the voters from getting the president they want, and updates on the origins of COVID and the lies our government tells us. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:35 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Let's see. Oh, hey, President Trump is bringing a lot of good stuff back to the country. A lot. And in case you were wondering, will he be doing some of the same old stuff that he did from his first administration? A couple of answers for you on whether or not he'll take a salary. Nope, not doing that. He just announced recently he is not taking a salary yet again, so he'll be donating the entirety of, what is it, about $400,000 right back into the federal treasury. So he's going to be overpaying his taxes by a dramatic margin, 100% tax on the money that he's taking. And I think he has to take like $1. I think that's the only mandate. He has to take like a single buck. But beyond that, not taking a salary yet again. He's donating his time to the country. Also, you remember that button on the Resolute desk, the red one that he would push, not to fire missiles, although I think at one point he threatened to do that to Kim Jong-un. He said, I've got a bigger button. He actually orders Diet Cokes with it. For real. I've been in the Oval Office when he does it. He presses the button, and then presto, somebody shows up with a silver tray and a glass that has a presidential seal on it, and it's full of bubbly Diet Coke. And they drop it right off at the Resolute desk for the president's consumption. That's apparently coming back. The Daily Mail reports today, when Donald and Melania Trump enter the White House next year on Inauguration Day, they'll find it looks just like it did when they left it 4 years ago, even down to the Diet Coke button on the desk in the Oval Office. That's all thanks to the staff of the White House residence, nearly 100 employees. They're non-political, and they stay on from president to president. They'll spend the morning of January 20th moving the departing commander-in-chief out and the incoming one in. They've got about 5 hours to get all of this done. It is one of the most amazing things because the outgoing president leaves the White House in order to attend the inauguration. The incoming president is, of course, at the inauguration, then will eventually make his way down to the White House. That's a 5-hour window. And the whole world changes. They've got to do everything. A massive, quick, lightning renovation to the White House to clean things up, get it ready to go, get the old people out, get the new people in. It's a well-coordinated process that comes after months of planning, the Daily Mail says, after all the staff have known since President Joe Biden exited the presidential race in July that, either way, a new family was moving in. By the time the Trumps enter 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, they'll find their clothes in their closet, their preferred shampoo in the bathroom, and their favorite foods in the kitchen. The family photos will be up and displayed. All of the furniture will be arranged to their liking. And for the White House staff, this is going to be easy. They know Donald and Melania Trump, thanks to his first term in office. Quote, there are no mysteries about what the Trumps would like to have for breakfast, how they operate, what kind of shampoo they use. I mean, they know everything already, says Kate Anderson Brower, author of The Residents, who has written all about this subject. So I guess the Diet Coke button is coming back to the Oval Office. So that's very exciting, and President Trump will be thrilled, quite naturally. Not saying that's why he ran for president, but that is one of the perks. You get the Diet Coke button. Let's see. What would I order if I had a button on my desk? Probably not that. It'd be a bourbon. Yes, it would be some kind of bourbon. It would vary day by day, though. We'd have to do consultations in the morning about what specific bourbon I was selecting that day. Okay, another piece for you that you need to know about. There are Democrats who are still holding on to hope that they can stop the Diet Coke button from arriving on the Oval Office desk. They are actively trying to block Trump, meaning some Democrats still are actively trying to block Trump from taking office. That literally is the headline today, in fact, on a Hill piece written by two lefty legal luminaries. One of them previously the editor-in-chief of the Columbia Law Review, a guy called Evan Davis. And the other was the editor-in-chief of the Yale Law Journal. His name's David Schulte. And they write today in the Hill headline, Congress has the power to block Trump from taking office, but lawmakers must act now. Oh, really? And then they go on through this harebrained reinterpretation of the 14th Amendment that somehow excludes Donald Trump from ever becoming president. It's all poppycock, but they present it as if this is legitimate. And they say, well, look at us. We're like important lawyers and stuff. The Constitution provides, this is them writing today, the Constitution provides that an oath-breaking insurrectionist is ineligible to be president. This is the plain wording of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Never mind that it's not actually the plain wording of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Quote, no person shall hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who having previously taken an oath to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, end quote. This disability can be removed by a 2/3 vote in each house, they insist. Disqualification is based on insurrection against the Constitution and not the government. The evidence of Donald Trump's engaging in such insurrection is overwhelming. They lie. They just lie. Because Trump raised objections to the way the election was conducted, because Trump asked for the election to be audited, for Trump asked for an accurate telling of the voice of the American people. He's an insurrectionist. That's their view. So these are anti-democracy people who are advocating this position. They're opposed to democracy, but somehow defenders of the Constitution. Sure. And boy, do they hate that the voters chose Trump. They hate this. And so they're begging for Congress to intervene. Stop Trump now. Well, I've got bad news for you. One, you don't have 2/3 of the House and the Senate to remove Trump from office. That's like as weak as enough Republicans are, unfortunately. You still don't have the numbers. That's not happening. Enough of this. And also, who are the people who care about the Constitution? Because it doesn't sound like you. First of all, the qualifications for the President of the United States are already clearly delineated in the United States Constitution, and President Trump meets all of them, which is, of course, why he was able to run for president and get elected. Now twice. And additionally, it's always been the left. It's always been the left, and it has been, especially this cycle, that has every sort of anti-democratic impulse you can possibly advance, which is hilarious that they're called the, quote, Democratic Party. They've been trying to imprison, well, let's start with imprison. They've been trying to imprison Trump, their chief political opponent. That didn't work. They've been trying to remove him from the ballot in places like Colorado and Maine. They didn't even want him on the ballot for voters to consider. The last thing they wanted is for voters to have a say. That didn't work. There have been people who have taken their anti-Trump animus so seriously, they've attempted to assassinate Donald Trump. And thank the good Lord, that didn't work. And the words that are coming out of the mouths of these goons right now, or at least being printed in the pages of The Hill, on the website The Hill, This idea is not new this year. It's one that's been advanced all year by the left. You've got people like Jamie Raskin, who was openly advocating for this. We need to declare Donald Trump ineligible to be president of the United States and therefore undermine the American voter. What? And he wasn't alone. There were a bunch of news outlets who were all floating this, lefty news outlets. They were all floating this concept earlier this year. And it was a disaster in every iteration of it. You want to foment revolution? Tell the voters their votes don't matter and you can impose on them any leader you feel like, and you know better than them. That's how you foment revolutions. This is textbook. This is straightforward. If in our constitutional republic, the people have no say whatsoever about their leadership, and you impose leaders upon them and then pop the double-barrel middle finger in their direction as you do it, well, that's actually how you destabilize the entire system. That's how you do it. That's insane. Don't do that. And shame on the Hill for even running this as a serious piece. They should run a counter piece that, like today, their opinion editor should find somebody else to write another piece to say, that was insane. Stop advocating this nonsense. You're the reason Trump got elected. People like you crazy people who should be nowhere near the levers of power. And so that's the update on that. And then one other big update on the corruption of our system, the corruption of the elites today that you should know about. The Wall Street Journal has a super important piece up today about all of the hemming and hawing within the United States government about whether or not they would tell you out loud that COVID came from a lab in Wuhan. It's an awesome piece today. I really encourage you to take a look at it. A lot of it you'll know, especially if you've been listening to this program for years or if you've just been consuming all of the available news on the subject. You basically know the cover-up that's involved here, that it was crystal clear. It was very likely that COVID came from a lab in China called the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that the United States government was funding it ultimately, and that the Chinese military had an operation center going on there. You probably know most of this. But what you may not have known is what the Wall Street Journal revealed today, which is that there were people within the Biden administration, that is, people who worked for the various agencies, who had assessed that, yeah, this thing came from the lab in Wuhan. That's our strong suspicion. And once it became clear that that was their position, they were routinely excluded from the highest level meetings on the subject and the public disclosures about what the government knew. In other words, the Biden administration was conducting a cover-up of the United States government's involvement in that lab and China's role in the emergence of this pandemic. That's what they were doing. And you can't leave out the fact that this happened. Remember, so much of this took place during the Trump era, out of Trump's sight. And that was intentionally. Anthony Fauci was right at the center of all of this. And instead of exploiting it in a way that they can be like, oh, look what Trump did, they're not even doing that. Have you noticed what they're doing? They're protecting the establishment's corruption is what they're doing. In case you're wondering where the battle lines are, this helps you understand it. So the Wall Street Journal today says this about a 2021 review. This is during Biden's era. Biden had ordered a speedy little review. I think he gave them 90 days. And he said, just review the origins of COVID for us. Okay. So here's what the Wall Street Journal says today. At the time, the FBI was the only agency that had concluded a lab leak was likely, a judgment it had rendered with moderate confidence. But neither Bannon, not Steve Bannon, but instead a man who works in the FBI on these types of subjects, nor any other FBI officials were at the briefing to make their case firsthand to the president. Quote, being the only agency that assessed that a laboratory origin was more likely and the agency that expressed the highest level of confidence in its analysis of the source of the pandemic, we anticipated the FBI would be asked to attend the briefing, Bannon recalled in his first on-the-record interview on the subject. This is with the Wall Street Journal. I find it surprising the White House didn't ask, he said. A spokeswoman for the Director of National Intelligence Office said that it wasn't standard practice to invite representatives from individual agencies to briefings for the president, and that divergent views within the intel community were fairly represented. Yeah, no big deal. They just excluded one of the most important government officials on this subject from the briefing. What was that about? A spokeswoman saying, the Office of the DNI and the National Intelligence Council's work on COVID-19 origins complied with all of the intel community's analytic standards, including objectivity. But an investigation by the Wall Street Journal shows that the disagreements among intel experts over what should be included in the report ran deeper than is publicly known. Nor were the FBI scientists the only ones who believed that the Intel Directorate review didn't tell the whole story. Here's how Jerry Dunleavy summarizes this today. He's over at the Washington Examiner. He used to be. He's a former DOJ reporter at the Examiner. He was also in the Republican Congress. He was an investigator there. He says new revelations by the Wall Street Journal on how the Biden-Harris administration covered up COVID-19's origins, including spy leaders excluding the FBI. At the time, allegedly the only U.S. intel agency that had assessed COVID likely came from a Wuhan lab from the 2021 briefing of Biden, but that's not all. He also points to other elements of this reporting, saying that scientists at the Defense Intelligence Agency's National Center for Medical Intel, that sounds important, had also concluded that COVID-19 had a lab origin. But that was allegedly at odds with the DIA's broader assessment, so that center's assessment wasn't incorporated in the report that was shown to Biden. And the scientists were told to stop sharing their findings. Well, that's not pro-science. Science is navigating towards answers, not foreclosing on the paths that lead to wisdom. So they cut those scientists out of the conversation, and they said, stop sharing what you found. I believe you call that a cover-up. State Department official, one of them, who served as a consultant to the World Health Organization, which is owned by China, let's remind you, was opposed to the lab leak hypothesis and thought that the World Health Organization's Chinese Communist Party influenced inquiry should be taken seriously. She was then made the director for global health security for the National Intel Council, which had sway over the COVID origins investigation. Oh, good. Someone who's a willing China stooge running the show for global health security for the National Intel Council. The report on COVID-19's origins was put together by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence under Avril Haines and by the National Intel Council, and it included information pushing the natural origin that the FBI didn't even believe had scientific merit, and it excluded information on the lab leak hypothesis. So that's where we are now. In other words, we're kind of finding out the final pieces of information, all of the transparency that you and I have been craving. The final pieces of information of what was going on here with this cover-up. Why weren't people being more forthcoming about the lab leak? Why weren't they telling you the whole truth? Who was precluding that truth from getting out there? Was there anybody in the government that was on our side? And it turns out, yeah, there were some. The Department of Energy assessed it was likely a lab leak. The FBI assessed it was likely a lab leak. You had various officials from the Trump era who had concluded it was a lab leak. David Asher, for instance, among them. And rational, normal people who just consumed all of this information and said, well, wait a second. The most obvious explanation, of course, is the lab. And yet the Biden administration sabotaged that transparency. They covered up the origins of COVID, which means, of course, they have a stake in the truth not coming out. That's what that behavior tells you. Otherwise, if they were innocent of any sort of guilt whatsoever, they would tell you. They'd be the first to tell you. They'd be excited to tell you, look what we found for you. But they're not doing that. That's the behavior of someone who's in on it. That's what's happening. And some more information today, and hopefully a lot more information when Trump gets back in office. I don't want to spend years relitigating everything, but I do think it's worthwhile that the American public have a crystal clear understanding of the ways a government can and has abused you so that we can prevent it from ever happening again. All right, tomorrow on the program, a healthy debate on legal immigration is breaking out on the right. I love it. We'll talk about it. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.